These are the men investigators in Boston want to find, the two suspects in Monday's bombing at the Boston Marathon. Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. The latest on the investigation tonight on KPBS Evening Edition. And there were some surprises in this year's count of San Diego's homeless population.
And North County's popular Sprinter train remains shut down for bad brakes. The train's top executive refutes a KPBS iNewsSource investigation about repair and maintenance funds. And a local filmmaker debuts a new documentary about lowrider culture in San Diego. I'm Peggy Pico. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. FBI has released photos and surveillance video of two suspects in the Boston Marathon bombing. The video shows two men walking through the crowd with backpacks. It was taken about 10 minutes before the first explosion. Agents call the man in the black baseball cap suspect 1 and the man in the white cap turned backwards suspect 2. FBI says suspect 2 was seen putting a backpack down near one of the explosion sites. They still don't know who the men are, but are hoping to get more leads by releasing the images. Earlier today, an interfaith service honored the 3 people killed and 176 injured in Monday's bombing. President Obama praised the people of Boston for their resolve.
If they sought to intimidate us, to terrorize us, to shake us from those values that Deval described, the values that make us who we are as Americans, well, it should be pretty clear by now that they picked the wrong city to do it.
The president promises those behind the bombing will be found and brought to justice. A telephone bomb threat forced the shutdown of a college campus in Los Angeles today. Police say a bomb squad search found nothing at California State University, Los Angeles. The campus was evacuated around noon as a precaution. No bomb was found, and classes are expected to resume tomorrow. Authorities in Texas still don't know how many people were killed last night when a fertilizer plant exploded. That blast leveled dozens of buildings. The plant was on fire, and the surrounded area was being evacuated when the explosion actually happened. The plant made materials similar to those used in the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Mexican drug cartels reportedly have a new ally joining forces with the Middle East terror group Hezbollah. J.W. August, investigations editor with our media partner 10 News, joins us to share results of their investigation. J.W., your story airing today looks at Hezbollah infiltrating the U.S. with help from cartels. Is that correct?
Yes, the story is based on a congressional report released late last year and a 10 News source in the intelligence community. While we have reported about this relationship in the past, the committee and our sources say the relationship has evolved. The cartels have money to move. Hezbollah has banks. It's reported that the cartels provide Hezbollah agents safe passage in and out of the United States.
And this was actually confirmed by 10 News from a member of the Homeland Security Committee?
That's right. That's correct. Dwayne, Congressman Michael McCall, the chairman of the committee, told us the committee is, quoting, concerned about Hezbollah operatives here in the United States, end quote. The report is called Line in the Sand, and you can access it on our website, 10news.com.
And, J.W., will the committee's report, do you think, take on any more urgency in light of the Boston Marathon bombing on Monday?
That would seem likely, but this connection between the terror group and the drug cartels was made long before the Boston bombing.
Thank you. J.W. August, investigations editor for our media partner, 10 News.
Thank you, Dwayne.
There were a few surprises in San Diego County's one-day homeless count this year. The number of people living on the streets actually went down compared to last year's count. KPBS Business and Environment reporter Eric Anderson has this update.
This year's homeless count came together on a rainy February morning. About 900 volunteers combed the county looking for homeless people, their shelters, and encampments.
We take our best effort at counting the homeless that are sheltered, and we get out there and comb 605 census tracts and take our best stab at it with volunteers. But it is just an estimate.
They found nearly 8,900 people. 3/4 were men, 70% had been homeless a year or longer. DSS says some findings were surprising. Nearly a third had college or trade school experience. Some findings were expected.
39% of those reporting had serious mental health issues. 34% reported very high-level substance abuse, drugs, or alcohol.
A point-in-time homeless count seems to make sense because you go out into a neighborhood, try to find the homeless people where they're living. But sometimes the homeless people are a little harder to see than you might think. And while the point-in-time census has limitations, it also has value. Federal officials will use the census as part of a complicated funding formula, and social service providers will get the numbers.
In the trenches, we work together with our community, and we do indeed end homelessness for thousands of people each year. That's wonderful news. The downside is, we learned this morning that there are at least another 8,900 who are on the street on a given night that we need to also look to.
The survey's homeless population fell by close to 700 people from a year ago. However, the count is still 4.5% higher than it was in 2010. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
You may have seen those specialty license plates honoring veterans or showing support for the arts. Money for those special plates is supposed to benefit different causes, but a state audit finds a big problem. It says the funds aren't going where they're supposed to. Some of it's been diverted to other programs. It's the first time the specialty plate program has ever been audited. Over 20 years, it's raised more than $200 million. A KPBS iNewsSource investigation raised questions recently about maintenance funds for the Sprinter, the North County commuter train. It's been shut down for more than a month because of brake problems. The agency in charge of the Sprinter is now refuting the report. Peggy Pico has more.
The North County Transit District Sprinter train first went into service in 2008. Prior to its recent shutdown, it connected 7,800 riders a day from Escondido to the Coaster commuter train in Oceanside. Joining me is North County Transit District Executive Director Matthew Tucker and iNewsSource reporter Brad Racino. Thank you both for being here and talking about this a little bit more. Mr. Tucker, when did you first become aware that there were problems with the brakes and the rotors for the Sprinters?
Well, I believe it was in March, right around the time after the California Public Utilities Commission had come in and done an inspection. My staff immediately informed me that there was an issue with the rotors.
And before that, you hadn't, because that's something we'll talk about.
No idea.
Okay, and Brad, now you have some sources that say that it was out there that there was problems with these brakes, that people were aware. Tell me about your sources and what you found as far as your documents go.
Sure. Well, one of the sources is the lead engineer, Richard Burke, who had been working on the Sprinter for years and who has been with North County for many, many years. He had told us that, I believe it was 3 years ago, they identified this problem within a year after the Sprinter started, and they had begun working on a fix for it. Him, along with the contractor and subcontractor, had been kind of scrambling to get some information about how to fix this.
And just to be clear, he's a former employee.
Right.
Okay, he's a former employee. And Mr. Tuck, do you want to respond to that it seems like there was it was on a budget, it was sort of presented, there might be some issues?
No budget issues. I think Mr. Racino is correct in terms of Mr. Burke as well as our contractor knowing that there was an issue. As Mr. Burke has said on the record, that he didn't write anything down and he inquired about fixes informally. That sort of created the issue that no one else at a higher level was aware of the problem from both our contractor side and NCTD, which would have allowed us to easily intervene and make the appropriate decision to purchase the part.
We'll come back to that, but I do want to say, I think a lot of people would say, well, the Sprinter's only been on track literally for 5 years, and now there's these brake problems. Is that typical for a new train, or is this something that's inherently in a design flaw or something like that?
Well, you have to understand our train is a very unique train. There's not a lot of history worldwide to be able to tell you exactly how it's going to perform. This issue was a problem that was not expected. It required us to make a change to modify the vehicle from its original design. And this is something we could have easily afforded. It should have been easily done because no vehicle, whether it be rail or automobile vehicle, performs exactly as how the manufacturer had told you was going to perform.
Let's talk about the money for that. But first, I do want to ask Brad, because I've heard you say before it's going to be about $400,000 in parts and more for the service to get that done. But we're going to come back to that because, Brad, part of the issue with this is there was a budget. You have a document of a budget that showed there was about $1.4 million in the fiscal year of 2012 for what? Tell us about that.
It was in the 2012 budget for fiscal year 2013 for the Sprinter vehicle drive overhaul, which would have included replacing the brakes and the rotors and other things as far as maintenance goes to the Sprinter.
Okay, but the issue is the coming fiscal year, this year, it was gone.
Right.
So, Mr. Tucker, that seems weird because you're like, oh, we didn't know about it, but there was this money in this budget. So, explain to us.
It's the difference between planned maintenance and something happening unexpected. As all of us described the rotor wear, this was premature, unexpected wear. So when the problem was identified 3 years ago, that required a different solution to sort of help you maintain the vehicle. You certainly, with a 2-year-old vehicle, would not have completed an overhaul for the vehicle after 2 years. You would have isolated what part needs to be fixed, and you would have addressed that part. So sort of what happens is that the issue related to the temporary fix and what the long-term maintenance need are sort of being conflated when they're two separate events.
Okay, I'm going to play Rider Advocate here. So the Transit District is a taxpayer-funded organization. It's going to cost more than $400,000 to fix this. Who's paying for it since it isn't in the budget?
Well, actually, we have more than the financial capacity to afford it. We've already worked with our contractors to place the order. And one of the things that we're working towards is when this whole episode is resolved and the Sprinter's back in operations, is to fully recover all of the costs that NCTD has paid as a matter of the Sprinter being shut down.
From the contractors?
From contractors.
Okay. And one other point of contention, Brad, in your investigative report, you said during this time frame, which seemed a little suspicious, I have to say, is this money was there in the budget, then it was gone, and at the same time about $800,000 was spent on studies, and tell us what that money was used for.
The money was allocated for studies. We don't know how much of it was actually spent. We know one study was completed. I don't know the others. Those studies were for various things that, according to multiple experts that we interviewed, do not belong in a capital budget. They were things like a public benefit study to better understand what transportation means for North County. There was a bus stop rationalization study, a document management study, things that, again, according to the people that we interviewed, do not belong in that budget.
Okay, so appearance-wise, it looks like, ooh, you took the money for the brakes and you put it over here. Is that what happened?
Well, I think a lot of this has to do with educational gap in terms of understanding transportation funding and accounting. We're talking about two separate things. Each year, NCTD undergoes an audit. We have 5 years of audits that show that we are fully compliant with every single expectation of GASB and any other accounting requirements that it's outlined. I think what needs to happen is we need to spend more time with Mr. Racino to educate him exactly on how transportation funding works so that he can understand that those items get identified that way based upon federal requirements.
And Brad, you're nodding.
I need to respond to this. We spoke with NCTD's own auditor who said that he hadn't looked at these line items. It wasn't his job to look at the line items. We also spoke to a senior officer within GASB, which is the organization that makes these standards, who I handed the budget to. And he said these do not belong in a budget.
Okay, so I'll have to point people to the website for the in-depth budget discussion you two are having, because we're almost out of time. But I did want to end with you, Mr. Tucker. When can riders expect the Sprinter to be back in service? When can they get their tickets? And I have a two-part to that. Will the ticket prices go up to help pay for the laps or the service?
No, absolutely. The prices won't go up. In fact, we're one of the unique agencies that actually lowered fares a couple of years ago. We're looking in the May timeframe to make an announcement about when the Sprinter will be restored, and we're working to make sure that our customers see the added value that we're going to provide to them as a matter of the time that we've had with the Sprinter being offline.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. A lot more on our website. Matthew Tucker and Brad Racino, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
NASA says its Planted Hunting telescope has found 2 Earth-like planets. Researchers say their size and possible temperatures indicate they might contain water, and where there is water, there might be life. The planets orbit a star much older than ours.
That means life on these planets may have been around for billions of years longer than we've had here on our Earth. The implications for that? Don't really know, but if intelligent life develops, it could be very advanced.
Now, he's one of dozens of astronomers who helped find the planets. By the way, NASA says they're 1,200 light years away, and a light year is about 6 trillion miles. UC San Diego has set a new admissions record, nearly 25,000 prospective students making the cut. Some of those students may choose to go to other schools. They have until May 1st to decide. UCSD says the most popular majors were economics, the sciences, and math. Some kids in City Heights had a real power lunch today, feasting on kumquats and oranges with the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. Tom Vilsack is on a national tour promoting a summer feeding program. It offers free lunch to students and their siblings during summer breaks from school. Last year, the Summer Fun Cafe served more than 300,000 meals, but Vilsack is encouraging school and city officials to go a step farther.
Nationally and across this great country, roughly 21 million of the 32 million children who are in school today are on free and reduced lunch. So that would mean that 21 million youngsters are in need of assistance and help when school is not in session. Unfortunately, USDA has provided help and assistance to about 2.5 million of those youngsters in our summer feeding program.
The Spring Fun Cafe will be open until the end of spring break next week. Chicano history comes to life on Sunday with a premiere of a documentary about lowriders. Peggy Pico talks with the filmmakers about the lowrider movement in San Diego.
You've probably seen the artistic paint jobs, custom details, and pumped-up frames that transform vintage cars into lowriders. They're popular at car shows, and there's even a song about them. And now there's a new documentary that includes San Diego's impact on the lowrider movement. It's called Everything Comes from the Streets, featuring some pioneers of the car craft.
Lowrider to me is a self-expression of the ideas and the style that you like. And lowrider to me is an individual pride.
Joining me are USD's Ethnic Studies Chair and the film's director and co-producer, Alberto Polito, and the film's co-producer and co-founder of Amigos Car Club, Rigo Reyes. Thank you both so much for joining me. Alberto, let's start with you. Why did you want to do this project? There's been other documentaries done. What was it that made you want to do this one?
We really wanted to tell the story of San Diego and the important contributions that the region of San Diego, the borderlands, have made to the lowriding movement.
In Rigo, you've made those contributions. You have been a lowrider for 35 years and still are a lowrider. What attracted you to it?
Mainly living in the barrio. Some of the older guys would drive around the neighborhood, and it really attracted me to them. And ever since I saw my first one, I fell in love with them, and I've been at it ever since.
Was it somewhat of an alternative to maybe a different lifestyle, a life that was a little bit more not legal?
Definitely. For us, it was sort of like an alternative to a barrio lifestyle that could be very dangerous. So for us, it was sort of like an outlet where we could focus on something very positive, do something very positive, work with your hands, and keep your mind out of trouble.
And very creative. How have things changed over the 35 years with lowriders as far as like the culture or the movement in general?
I think technology more than anything. Back in the day when I first started lowriding, the technology that we used back there was pretty much backyard type of a technology, whatever we had available. Most of the parts that we were using at that particular time was recycled material. Most aircraft, we will go to different suppliers that would help us find some recycled material from the airplanes.
So a little more grassroots and now more
Definitely.
money. But women, are more women involved now?
More women are involved now than back then, particularly back since the late 70s. Women started getting more involved, and they developed their own car clubs.
In Alberto, as far as the Chicano community is involved, how are lowriders perceived? Are they perceived well, or are they feared a little bit? What's the perception?
You know, I think with our documentary, we cover a 30-year period, and in the 1970s, when we see the first organized lowrider clubs, very much leaders, very much taking a lot of leadership role. But unfortunately, with a lot of the negative media, such as Boulevard Nights, it really made things very negative, a lot of tension between the police and the lowriders.
And I was going to ask you about that because some people would link lowriders and they automatically associate gangs. Is that really true?
No, I think our film really supports the issues of family, the issues of community, the expensive amount of money that goes into these vehicles. It's about protecting the cars and actually just showing them off.
And when it comes to what you want people to take away from this, and Rigo, let me start with you. You want people to see this film. What would you like them to come out of the theater thinking or feeling?
I think more of a question as far as the roots of the movement, of the lowrider movement. The title says itself, it comes from the streets. Everything comes from the streets, whereas today's scene, if you will, is more in a more corporate arena, if you will, because it's more geared towards the car show arena, whereas it's more expensive, it's more show and tell, whereas before it was pretty much the streets. I mean, cruising was our #1 thing.
And Alberto, here in San Diego, I know at the Chicano Park there's going to be more than 300 cars at that. As you said, it's become a big, booming, popular business now. What would you like people to take away from that? Are you pleased with that?
Oh, what I would like people to take away from it is that there's a lot of rich history, a very complicated story with reaching out to Mexico. There was a lot of big lowrider movement in Tijuana, the role of women. There was a racing team by the name of the Bean Bandits, which are featured in our film. Just a very, very rich history and something that we in San Diego should be very proud of.
All right. Well, we certainly will have more information about that. Thank you both for joining us. I want to let people know that Everything Comes from the Street premieres this Sunday in San Diego. There's a whole lot more of information on our website, kpbs.org.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next News Hour, President and Mrs. Obama attend an interfaith prayer service for the victims in Boston. That's Thursday on the PBS News Hour.
Another warm day, then a gradual cool down for San Diego. Beach highs around 80 tomorrow, then partly cloudy and cooler for the weekend. Mid-80s with plenty of sunshine for the inland valleys through Saturday. Sunny in the mountains and back into the 70s this weekend, while the desert will warm into the upper 80s and low 90s. A story now about a man who has an historic connection to San Diego's North County. As famous as he was, few local people know he was also an important part of our past. Ken Kramer shows us in tonight's About San Diego.
There's a little house in Fallbrook. I don't know if you've ever seen it on Rocky Crest Road. A man named Pittenger, William Pittenger, lived here with his family in 1893, came here to Fallbrook to be pastor of the Methodist Episcopal Church. But what the members of his congregation might have known, or maybe not, is who Mr. Pittenger was. In the spring of 1862 Civil War, a Union soldier, he was one of a group called Andrews Raiders. They went deep into the South, stole a train, and with the idea of crippling transportation in the Confederacy, they headed north, destroying track, bridges, and telegraph lines behind them. All the raiders, including Pittenger, were eventually captured. Some were hanged, but he escaped, was recaptured, and ended up being freed as part of a prisoner exchange. So while he and the rest of Andrews' raiders were only partly successful, it was still considered one of the most daring adventures of the Civil War.
You've won for us a new respect, and we are grateful.
After that, life in Fallbrook must have seemed peaceful indeed for Reverend Pittenger. With enough time for him to write about what he and his fellow raiders had done, it became known as the Great Locomotive Chase by William Pittenger, and of course as a Walt Disney movie. The old church where he was pastor is still there, and not far from his home in Fallbrook, over at the cemetery just a couple of miles away, his grave is marked with a tribute to him as one of Andrews' raiders, and the note that for his valor, he was presented the Medal of Honor. In fact, it had just been created. He was the first person to ever receive one.
Corporal William Pittenger,
a hero in his nation's cause, an historical author, a Fallbrook pastor with a past to be sure.
Congratulations, Mr. Pittenger.
In all, a man and a story to be remembered about San Diego.
And if you want to see more of Ken's stories about San Diego, his half-hour show can be seen tonight and every Thursday night at 8 here on KPBS. Recapping tonight's top stories, FBI has released photos and video of 2 suspects in the Boston Marathon bombing. The video shows 2 men walking through the crowd with backpacks. It was taken about 10 minutes before the first explosion. Agents call the man in the black baseball cap Suspect 1 and the man in the white cap turned backward Suspect 2. FBI says Suspect 2 was seen putting a backpack down near one of the explosion sites. A telephone bomb threat forced the shutdown of a college campus in Los Angeles today. Police say a bomb squad search found nothing at California State University, Los Angeles. The campus was evacuated around noon as a precaution. No bomb was found, and classes are expected to resume tomorrow. Authorities in Texas still don't know tonight how many people were killed last night when a fertilizer plant exploded. That blast leveled dozens of buildings. There will be much more on the explosion on PBS NewsHour at 7. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app, all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.